Hello everybody, I'm Tessa Shepperson from Landlord Law, and I'm absolutely delighted to have as my guest today Eddie Hooker,
Hi.
who is the Chief Executive Officer of Hamilton Fraser Insurance.
Well, you make it sound so much more grand than actually it is. Lovely
It's
to be.
really important because you've got so many businesses. So Eddie, I'm going to take you right back.
Lovely.
Tell me about your background when you were a kid, your education. Tell me a bit about yourself. Where did you come from?
So I was born in South London,
Uh-huh.
in a place called Worcester Park.
Uh-huh.
One of four siblings. I've got three siblings, so it's myself, my brother Sean, who you know, and then two sisters. So big family. My mum was from County Wicklow in Ireland, and my dad from Hackney.
Okay.
And
Bit of a mixed marriage then.
it worked. So I've got to say, I had a very happy childhood. We weren't particularly well off. Growing up in the 70s was quite
Yeah, I remember.
a difficult time, but you got on with life, didn't you? I think that's something which is different from, we didn't have mobile phones
No, we
and stuff
didn't,
like
no.
that, so you had to make
Computers.
your own fun.
Yeah.
And then at the age of 7, my father got promoted. He was actually in insurance as well.
Oh, right.
So the whole family, my mum was in insurance. I think that's where they met. I think, and we moved up to North London in 1974, and then I went to school in a local comprehensive. So nothing particularly privileged or anything. I just remember my childhood it being carefree, very simple.
Were you good at maths?
Not particularly. I was more actually more of an English. I enjoyed English and art, funnily enough. And that's a lot of where my future life came from in terms of my creativity and things like that. But I was good at creative writing and good at art and that sort of thing. And in fact, I think from there, my big claim to fame, if there's anything, I then set up a band.
Oh, right.
In the early to mid 80s, and it was a very good band actually. And we ended up, I made one record.
What did you play? Were you the singer?
I'm a drummer.
Oh, you're the drummer.
I'm a drummer.
Oh, right.
So that's how and music's been part of my life ever since. And we ended up getting record interviews with CBS Records and Island Records.
What are you doing in a boring industry like
Well, absolutely. It's like I then went to work for Legal and General Insurance. That's where my background in insurance started. I don't think, like most people in insurance, you plan to go into insurance.
Yeah, it sort of happens.
It sort of happened, and I wanted an office-based, not too much stress, so that I could do the band work and everything else. But like everything I do, if I'm going to do something, Tessa, I want to do it well.
Yeah.
So you grow up, you get married, and then you start focusing on what's more important rather than playing drums the whole time and trying to make it big in the music. I always wondered what had happened if I'd actually signed that record contract and where would I be now. But I don't look back generally, I always look forward.
Look forward, yeah.
So that was my childhood, and I've got to say I thoroughly enjoyed that 18, 20 years. And my mum and dad put a lot of effort into all four of us, really, so they would support us if we wanted to do something. Generally and I think that's really important.
It is important
in a family, that your kids aren't always good at everything, but actually their happiness and supporting them for what they want to do, I think is very important.
So you were working at the insurance company.
Yes.
Where did you go after then?
So I did. I started off doing basic household insurance, motor insurance, and then some commercial. But what I really loved doing was talking to people. Anyone who knows me, knows I love a good old chinwag. And I ended up applying for a job that was, in those days, was called an inspector. These days, it's called an account executive, where I had my own panel of insurance brokers, and that's how I first had my experience of insurance broking. So my job was to go round and develop their accounts and make sure the business they gave Legal and General was the right type of business.
Okay.
And then you get married, and I really focused on it, and I really enjoyed that part of my career. And then of course then I met a guy called Simon Fox, who was a salesman in one of the brokers I was dealing with, and we both felt that the industry could do better than it was doing at the time. We wanted to take over the world. We could do broking and insurance better.
Yeah.
You with me? And that was the beginnings of Hamilton Fraser. We decided we'd go into business together.
And you set up your new business?
And we set up Hamilton Fraser in 1996 I was a tender age of 29.
Wow. Yeah.
Never run a business in my life. In fact, Simon had never run a business in his life. He was the salesman end of the agreement, and I was more the back office organizer of that. And our philosophy, I suppose, there was no internet back then.
Yeah, I remember it well, yeah. Well, there was a bit, but not really.
But you couldn't really go online and buy your insurance
Yeah.
as you can today. But what we felt at the time was most important was customer service and controlling the process. So back in the early 90s, if you wanted to buy insurance, generally you'd ring up an insurance broker. That insurance broker would contact half a dozen insurers. That would take about a week. Then they'd go back to the client, sell it to the client, and then the client would take a few days to make a decision. They'd come back to me or to the broker. Then the broker would go back to the insurance company, and before you knew it, a month had gone by, and then you got your... Well, that's not customer service. I mean, today, could you imagine trying to get a motor quote?
Yeah.
And it takes you a month.
Yeah.
So the Hamilton Fraser way was we wanted control of the product.
Okay.
So we then set up what we call schemes with insurance companies that we controlled the paperwork and the service element.
Okay.
And we could then provide insurance quotes and put people on cover within a day.
That's amazing, yeah.
And that's what we did. And so we were the early pioneers of internet before there was internet. But that was... And funnily enough, that's what we do now. So all the businesses that I operate and we own are based on that same customer experience, quick, easy, straight through, no messing about.
Yeah, excellent. So, I mean, now Hamilton Fraser is known, I suppose, for two things: property, and you've also got your cosmetic side of the business.
Yeah.
Particularly we concentrate on the property side in this interview. How did you get into the property then? Why did you decide to specialise in that?
Okay, again, more luck than judgment. I cannot say to anybody that I sat down and pondered this for months and months and months. It just didn't happen. When we set Hamilton Fraser up, one of our first clients was the National Landlord Association. Well, in fact, it was called the Small Landlord Association,
I remember that,
if you remember. And in the mid-90s, this was pre the buy-to-let boom. So that didn't really happen until 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
So landlords back in the mid-90s and before were, let's put it this way, they weren't first in the queue to be invited to a party. And they struggled to find relevant insurance. They were buying household policies and then manipulating them and not telling the lender or the insurer that they were letting them out. And we put together the UK's first bespoke landlord insurance policy. And the Small Landlord Association, then to become the National Landlord Association, took that product that we designed and they started selling it
to
their members. And from there, that was how our involvement with property, because you had to then turn up at meetings that the NLA were running. You had to know what you were talking about, and from there we just met and understood the market a lot deeper. So a bit of a baptism of fire, but once actually you get into it, I wouldn't say they're just like any other client. Landlords are quite demanding. They want the right, it's their investment they're protecting, so we had to do it properly. But coupled with the speed they could get the cover, that's how we got, and everything else blossomed from there, as no doubt we'll talk about in a moment.
Yeah.
On the cosmetic side, again, that was another client that we picked up, and in fact, it was a chain of beauty salons in the North London area. And in 1997, the cosmetic industry was all under the radar. It was only really rich and famous people that ever had any procedures done to them. But back then it started opening out, and some of the big manufacturers couldn't introduce their product into the UK because they couldn't get insurance.
Oh right, so there was an opening.
And that's again, that was just eye-opening for us, because again, another opportunity that not many people did. That type of insurance, and we went to the market and we found a little liability policy that we started selling to nurses and to doctors, and I just travelled around the country meeting loads of nurses, doctors and then dentists, and we got to be known as as the small individual practitioner's friend for insurance, and we've now got 10,000 individual practitioners around the country, all buying these liability, and of course the market's exploded. There's so much done now. I've had nothing.
A good thing to have got into, really.
So I always say that Hamilton Fraser ended up specialising in two specific areas, both what I call investment or luxury end, which is the buy-to-let market, which is all about investment and for landlords to build their nest eggs for the future, and a cosmetic, which is a higher end luxury commodity that not many people insure, and you can make yourself known in those marketplaces rather than competing all the time.
That's
the mass market.
Good. Yeah. So with continuing on the property line, so you've got your insurance product in place.
Yes.
What was the next thing? Because you've done various other businesses, haven't you?
Exactly. So the change for Hamilton Fraser, there's always in every business and in life generally, there is always something that changes everything.
Yeah.
And that was my deposits, which is the authorised tenancy deposit protection scheme. And that was all down to the relationship that we had at the time with the National Landlord Association. And David Salisbury, God rest his soul, who was the then chairman, we became quite friendly, and I ended up going to a landlord meeting in Waterloo in the centre of London, and there was a civil servant there that was discussing the changes in the Housing Act 2004. And one of the changes was mandatory tenancy deposit protection. And the civil servant mentioned two words, and I'll always remember it because I was just about to run out and have a cigarette and smoke back then, and I was bored stiff, and because of all this talk, and I thought, what do I need to know about the law? And then anyway, the last slide on this presentation, which turned my head, was on tenancy deposit protection. They mentioned two words. One was insurance, and the other was scheme.
Right.
And I thought, that's what we do. We run insurance. That's what we do for landlords. We do insurance, and we like schemes. I.e., we like to control the process. And we decided to put a bid in. But again, where do you learn how to put a government scheme in? And that's where David came in, David Salisbury, because he just picked me up and said, "We'll back you." And you and I, Eddie, we will do all the work. We won't involve anybody else. We'll, just in case it's a waste of time and energy. And I spent hours. I do my day job at Hamilton Fraser, and then I drive down to David's house at night in Surbiton, which is quite a distance from North London to Surbiton. And then we'd work for another 3 or 4 hours crafting the bid. There was no blueprint, Tessa, so no one else did tenancy deposit protection.
Make it up.
We had to make it up, file open new.
Yeah.
And then start typing.
Yeah.
And
must have been quite fun though. Was it exciting?
Well, it was exciting in the sense that you never knew what doors were opening, so you'd hit a barrier. So where do we find the insurance? None of the insurance companies were interested, and then someone gives you well, why don't you speak to Richard over there, and maybe he'll do it. And then suddenly he says, oh, well, I'll have a go.
Yeah, and then you're in business.
Then you walk forward another 5 steps, and then there's another door. How do you put a bid into the government? Well, let's go and talk to them.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, we've only had half a dozen bids. We like the NLA. You seem to know what you do. And then you walk through that door, and then you walk through another door. And lo and behold, in 2006, November, I remember it to the day I'll die, I was on the train going to see my sister in Winchester. Packed train, 5:30 in the evening, and a phone call came through from the government to say we would like to appoint My Deposits or Hamilton Fraser to run one of these schemes. And I just whooped in the middle of this, this train. Everyone thought...
How exciting, yeah.
That's what we did. And you know, I always say to people, people watching or anyone generally, sometimes in life, if you're offered an opportunity to do something and you don't know what to do, go for it anyway and then learn what to do.
I think a lot of things in life and in business is having the guts to go for it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Everyone had told me, why was I bothering?
Yeah.
You'd go bust. No one will protect a deposit. There's not many landlords out there. Why would tenants even want their money protected? Blah, 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 blah. You'll go bust. That's what I was told by... We had so many consultants talking to us.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, there's something here.
You have to follow your instincts. I mean, if it's your business, you're experienced in insurance, so...
Yeah.
You know.
And we were running a very small company. We'd only been going 5-6 years. Well, a bit longer, that's 7-8 years, but still, it's difficult setting up your own business because you've suddenly got 20 people you're responsible for employment-wise. We were making some nice money at the time, so then you start thinking, do we want to gamble it all? But when My Deposits launched on the 5th of April 2007, it was my 40th birthday, and we launched it, and our business plan had said that we would protect 80,000 deposits for 24,000 landlords in the first 5 years. The day we launched, within 3 months from the day we launched, we had more than 200,000 deposits.
That's amazing, yeah.
And more than 50,000. So we bust all of our targets in 3 months. And it just, of course, we didn't have the infrastructure. We had a basic website. And of course, then over the last 10 years, you start refining your skills, and then the infrastructure grows as you try and make it easier for people. But back in the early days, the money was coming in, and we invested it back into the business, which then allowed us to open up to other angles. Now it's more difficult because I've got 100 people working for My Deposit, so you can't, just willy-nilly spend money.
I remember when the schemes first came in, it was like My Deposits was for landlords, the TDS was for the agents, and what's the other one?
DPS.
The DPS were for people who didn't want to pay out any money.
That's right, yeah. And of course, the other change, you remind me now, Tessa, the other change was we were set up for landlords, but TDS couldn't cope with the number of applications from letting agents. The market had underestimated how many letting agents are out there.
Right.
And on the day they opened their doors, they suddenly realised that they couldn't cope with the number of applications. So the government rang us and said, would you open your doors to letting agents? And of course our systems weren't designed for that, but you don't say no.
No.
So then we ended up, we've got something like 3,500, letting agents on our books now, which we wouldn't have had otherwise if TBS had been able to cope. So again, there's a bit of luck along the route. But once I get hold of something, I want to do it properly. So I don't want to just take money for the sake of taking money. At the end of the day, we are here to provide a really important service to tenants and to landlords. It's protecting money.
That's right.
From there, from My Deposits England, we then went in England and Wales. We then went to Scotland. We learned how to run a custodial scheme in Scotland.
Oh, right, yes, and then you were able to bring that back.
And then bring that back when England and Wales offered us the custodial 3 years ago. We then went into Northern Ireland, who then had their own bit of legislation. And then I suppose for me, the jewel in the crown was in Jersey, when the Jersey states procured Now, they only wanted one scheme out of the 3 existing schemes. In all the other territories, all 3 of us, DPS, TDS and us, we won contracts because we're the only people that knew what to do. But in Jersey, they wanted one, so we had to go head to head with DPS, and we won that because they liked our approach of customer service. So although it's a small part of our business, to me it's the most special because whilst we had to fight for all of the other schemes, this one we were pitted against the other schemes, so they were comparing all of us together, and I just feel very proud that they chose us in the end.
So you've got My Deposits. What was the next development on from that? Was
Property
it
redress
property
scheme.
redress scheme?
So you know Sean, my brother, who's my head ombudsman. Always have someone in the family you can trust them implicitly, and they get you. And Sean's one of those people. But the property redress scheme was another government scheme that came out because the government knew us from My Deposits, and they knew that we delivered on everything that we said we would deliver. They were looking for a third scheme to complement.
Yes, because they had, what was it? There was the
Property Ombudsman.
Property Ombudsman Services.
That's correct, and they wanted a third.
Yeah.
Because there was something like 4,000 or 5,000 landlords letting agents that hadn't joined.
Yeah, and they were mostly the smaller letting agents.
They were
weren't
mostly
they?
the smaller ones, and so they were mainly the smaller end of the market, and they were probably the toughest market to try and get hold of. And when they made the law, when the law came in 2015, we put a bid in, and our remit was, or our bid was, we will find those 4,000 or 5,000 letting agents for you. And we'd learnt our trade through dispute management in My Deposits, so they knew that we could do it, and they said we'll give you a shot, and that's how we got into redress. Now, 4 years on, we now have more than 10,000 firms.
That's amazing.
Not branches, firms.
How many of them came over? Because you probably got some when
OSP pulled out
when they
last
pulled out,
year. And you would be surprised, actually. We probably, out of they think they had somewhere in the region. Ricks used to use OSP. And we probably picked up about 30-35% of their membership. So yes, of course, that brought another 2,000 people probably into our membership. But the other 8,000 is literally we've had to go out there and put an offering that is attractive. Yeah. Because the property ombudsman, of course, they don't want to lose business as well, and our pricing is very similar now to the property ombudsman. I wouldn't say come to the property redress scheme if you just want to save money. We are roughly, give or take, thereabouts. But people do enjoy the experience. It's very easy online.
I know, because I joined myself. I mean, that's one of the things that you provide a service not only for letting agents, but for other businesses as well.
Yes, so we do other redress schemes as well, and it is. I think if you can get the customer experience right, I think they'll be a little bit more forgiving when something does go wrong, because they generally, that you don't mean it if something does go wrong. But also, I think we've got to move away from everything being price conscious, and that's part of the trouble with the internet. I think is driving everything down in terms of cost and price. But of course, someone's got to pay for that, and generally, government contracts don't make you a lot of money, so it is very, very important to get that cost base right, but at the same time get that customer service. And I've got some excellent people that do that for a living. From the property redress scheme, then client money protection.
Obviously.
And that's law now, that came in on the 1st of April, but we put that scheme together in 2015, before it was even on the mandatory horizon. And I felt the reason we should do that, and it was another guy, a director that was working here, a guy called Ian Langley, who actually spotted the opportunity. And I backed it because I thought we protect tenants' deposits, but what about the rest of it? What about the rents and the maintenance monies and the advance monies that landlords, letting agents, and you hear all the stories, don't you, of things going.
Some terrific losses that landlords have had.
The papers only generally report on deposits going missing. They don't forget that because the deposit is someone else, it's a tenant's
Someone
money.
else's money.
Yeah.
But I mean, the landlord has to pay out.
Yeah, the landlord is the one that actually gets it on the neck. And you wouldn't go on holiday now without looking at the ABTO or the ATOL mark. And that's what CMP is. But we set that up in 2015 because Paul Champlina, who's he works with, he's the brand ambassador for Hamilton Fraser, but he founded Landlord Action, who we bought a couple of years ago. He was campaigning quite rigorously for CMP, and we set that scheme up independently, so you didn't have to be a member of a trade body because that's the only place you could get CMP. And we built about 1,000 members over the last 4 or 5 years. Voluntarily, people were coming to us. They didn't have to. Of course they do now. And we launched that. We won an approved scheme earlier this year, and that's gone live.
You
now.
were the first one, I think.
We were the first one to be authorised.
Yeah, no, they've got others as well now.
We don't talk about that. There's enough for everybody in the marketplace, and I think if we picked up every single letting, we wouldn't be able to cope. So, and I think it's right that Property Mark and Ricks have their own schemes.
Oh yeah, well I mean Arla's had their scheme for a long time, haven't they?
That's what they do.
Yeah.
But now there's an option in the marketplace, a formal option for letting agents that don't want to become a member of a trade body, and there's loads of reasons why they don't.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't stop them trading, and that's where CM Protect comes in, is to say, if you don't want to be a member of a trade body, we're not going to penalise you, come and join our scheme. Obviously, you've got to jump through the hoops. So that was CMP, so then I had Hamilton Fraser, My Deposits, PRS, Client Money Protect.
Quite an empire.
I then bought Paul, Landlord Action,
Landlord Action.
which has added a regulated law firm to our offering.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't compete with you, Tessa, but obviously
we
do a little
collaborate.
bit. We collaborate. So we focus on evictions, Section 21, Section 8.
Yep.
And then the final piece of the jigsaw for now, I've got loads of ideas for the future, is that we bought Landlord Zone, which is a news site.
Yes.
So it's our first foray really into media and giving out education to those landlords that are there's about 100,000 landlords that subscribe to that website.
It's a big site. I mean, I've known Tom, who ran it for years, and I've always admired him.
He wanted a safe home.
Yeah.
And he'd had a few offers from other media companies, but he didn't want to just become part of a media empire.
Yeah, wanted someone who's in the property
That's
arena.
right, to look after it and to nurture it and to try and expand it for the future. And I think we have a lot of responsibility in the marketplace with all the different things that we do. To look after not only the product, more importantly, look after the people that are using those products.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important.
What about the Tenant Verify?
So Tenant Verify was another small little business that Tom owned. And so when we bought Landlord Zone, it came
with part of the package.
Exactly, a bit of a Brucey bonus for you. As I used to call it. But again, it's a tenant referencing company. It's very small. It doesn't compete with the big boys out there, but it's a very thorough tenant referencing company. So we don't compete on price. So if you want a full, all singing, all dancing reference that includes the previous landlords, includes employment, it's not one of these newfangled passporty type things which are appearing. If you want a proper reference, then Tenant Verify is the type of product you need. And we've got about 30,000 landlords that use Tenant Verify.
He's quite well known in the industry.
Yeah. And then the other unique thing, which no other referencing firm has, it we can do employment referencing. So you don't even have to be a landlord to use. If you are an employer, we will do a full employment check on any candidate that is coming through.
Well, that's useful to know.
So a lot of people don't know that, but
now they do.
Now they do. I think we actually are the appointed referencing company for Transport for London.
Oh right.
Yeah, so they signed up with us. So you know, it's all. I get up every morning, Tessa, and I love coming to work. It's I'm learning something every day.
Now, what are you going to do for the future? What exciting areas are you going to branch into next?
Have a holiday. Look, my vision for this company is that we started off as an insurance broker, and that's always at the heart of what I do because it's where I came from, and you never forget your past. But over the years, and we've been in business now since 1996, which is what, 23? It's 23 years this year. I want to be a provider of relevant services to the private renting sector, and increasingly the cosmetic sector, but leaving the cosmetic sector to one side, but for the private renting sector. So I don't do anything or won't buy anything or won't expand into an area where I don't think I can add value. What's the point? You know, but if I see that there's an opportunity or there is a product in the market that does not do what it says it's going to do, or is not transparent, or is not consumer driven, I look to get into. So for the future, you could look at things like, well, of course, we've got the no deposit alternatives that are coming out. That's something which I'm very passionate about, that doesn't work properly. I don't think they're being sold properly. I don't think everybody's understood the risks properly. If we were to step into that arena,
that would be interesting.
That would be something that I would want to do, and do well and do right, and put the tenant first and the landlord first, rather than commissions for agents and not explaining what the product is, just because it's easy to move into a property. So stuff like that, I'd like to look at mortgages in the future, buy-to-let mortgages. They're not regulated the same way as domestic mortgages are, so I'd like to look at something like that. So a rounded portfolio of services that are relevant, well delivered, transparent, value for money, and look after the consumer. That's the most important thing. Otherwise, let's all go home and do something else.
What about education? Because I should mention that Hamilton Fraser is sponsoring our conference, the Landlord Law Conference this year, which we're very excited about.
Thank you.
We're really looking forward.
We're delighted to be involved. Education, again, it comes on from everything else that we do. So can I just talk about the cosmetic a little bit?
Sure.
Because I know it's not property, but I always say to the cosmetic market that education, raising standards, is at the cornerstone of that particular area of our business. So we deal with medical practitioners, and just because you're trained as a nurse, doctor, dentist doesn't mean you understand immediately what you are required to do in that sector. So we do a lot of education in the cosmetic market about raising the standard of the industry. And we do the same with the property market. So you'll see from our website, it's not just about buy. It's actually, can we help you as a consumer, as a landlord, as a tenant, as a letting agent, actually be more successful in your business? And actually, how can we raise those standards? You know, CMP is a classic example. You know, CMP is mandatory. It's there for a reason. It's to protect the consumer's money that the letting agent's holding.
It should have been around for a long time.
But just buying it isn't enough. How do you run your client account? How do you reference your accounts manager? How do you account for the commission you're earning out of the tenancy? You know, do you just store it all in one big bank account, or do you have different bank accounts for different parts of your business? So we do a lot of education. Paul Champlina, who's our brand ambassador, as I said before, he is passionate about education as well. So he's launched a series of letting agent training sessions and seminars, and it's all under the banner of HF Academy. So again, that might be an area that will expand in the future. It's a non-for-profit area of our business. We don't go out there to make money at training, whereas a lot of companies do. It's about giving a little bit back. You with me? So we keep the cost of the courses rock bottom to encourage as many people as we can to come and talk to Paul, Sean, myself, Susie, who does all the dispute management and other key areas of our business, and end up with a bit of a one-stop shop. For all the different things that you need to run a successful business, but also learn how to put that into practice. So very exciting. Very exciting time.
Very exciting time.
And links with people like yourself is highly important, not just for credibility, but because we learn. So
Yeah.
we would be at your conference whether we sponsored it or not.
Well, Sean's
we,
been coming for years.
yeah, because we learn,
Yeah.
you know, and that's important. Education and learning are absolutely important to become successful at anything. You know, when I started the business all those years ago with Simon, we were passionate about learning.
Yeah.
You know, because if you learn and you can impart that learning to other people, the rest, for me, will follow.
Yeah.
And we've never forgotten that over the years.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me
Oh, no,
today.
absolutely.
And I hope Hamilton Fraser goes from strength to strength.
We're not going anywhere, you know, but thank you, Tessa, and thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the past.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.